That night, the rain felt alive, slashing across the highway like it had teeth, clawing at the asphalt in sheets that blurred the world into streaks of light and water, every headlight smeared into ghostly smudges in the blackness. I had been driving home from a late shift, the kind where your eyelids ache with weight, when a black Mercedes came out of nowhere, fishtailing across 2 lanes before kissing the guardrail with a shriek of bending metal. The impact folded the car like paper. Airbags detonated in a puff of white, smoke coiled from the crumpled hood, and the air filled with the metallic bite of gasoline and blood. My instinct yanked me to the shoulder before I even thought. I was already running, shoes slapping water, lungs burning as I tore toward the wreck. I reached the driver's side door, ripped it open, and pulled him out into the storm, dragging him across slick asphalt until he collapsed in a heap under the ditch light. Expensive watch, tailored suit torn and soaked crimson, face pale beneath streaks of rain and blood. This was no ordinary accident victim. His eyes caught mine, wide, hollow, haunted like a man staring straight into the end of his life. His voice rasped out of a torn throat, ragged and urgent. "Don't call 911. They're not here to save me." I froze, my phone halfway out of my pocket as he shoved something into my hand. A hotel key card, plastic warm with his blood. "Crane, Elliot Crane," he choked. My chest seized because I knew that name. Everyone knew that name. Tech empire, Palo Alto to Portland, the kind of billionaire whose face lived on magazine covers, the man with apps and data streams wired into every household in America. And now he was half dead in my arms, muttering secrets into the storm. "If I don't make it," he coughed hard, blood speckling his lips, "your doorbell camera. Tonight. Midnight." His fingers crushed my wrist like a vice, cold but unrelenting, as if he was chaining me to his fate. Before I could ask what the hell he meant, lights rose over the hill, blue beams piercing through rain. Relief stuttered into my chest. Ambulances, finally, I thought. But then my stomach dropped because these weren't ambulances. 2 SUVs rolled down slow, headlights off, no sirens, no markings, moving like predators stalking a wounded thing. Elliot's grip tightened, his pupils blown wide with fear. "Tell no one," he hissed. "Not the cops. Not your friends, nobody." His chest heaved, each breath shallower than the last. I dragged him off the shoulder into the ditch, mud swallowing our knees, hearts pounding as the SUVs ghosted past, slowing, scanning, engines snarling low but never stopping. I held him there, rain battering us both, waiting for the night to decide if we lived or died. His breathing faltered, thinned, then went quiet, and for a terrible moment I thought I had watched a billionaire die with my own hands on his chest. By the time I staggered back to my car, my shirt plastered to my skin with blood and storm water, the Mercedes was gone. Not wrecked. Not mangled. Gone, swept clean like the crash had never existed. By sunrise, even the guardrail was spotless. No twisted steel, no glass on the road, no trace of fire or smoke. I checked the news on every channel, every local update, every traffic report, and there was nothing. No crash, no fatality, no mention of Elliot Crane. It was like the entire night had been erased. My head spun, my body numb, the hotel keycard heavy in my pocket like a burning brand. I barely slept, replaying every second, the warning about my doorbell camera, the way he said it like a dying prayer, as though my ordinary suburban home had somehow become part of his billionaire nightmare. And then, just after dawn, when the house still smelled of rain on the roof and coffee I hadn't had the will to make, there came a knock at my door. The sound was polite, casual, but it froze my blood because something in me already knew. I opened it, and there he stood, Elliot Crane, not a scratch on him, not a tear in his suit. His hair perfectly combed, his skin glowing with the kind of health you couldn't fake. His smile was stapled onto his face, smooth and practiced, the kind of smile that said nothing and everything at once. He looked at me like we hadn't shared the mud, the storm, the secret in the ditch, like I hadn't dragged his bleeding body out of twisted steel. His voice was calm, soft, almost tender. "Happy Father's Day," he said. And then he handed me a single folded paper, the edges crisp, the ink fresh, something so ordinary in appearance that it was horrifying. My hands shook as I took it, because deep in my bones I already understood. Whatever was on that paper wasn't just meant to explain last night. It was meant to blow my entire life apart. The paper trembled in my hands, the ink swimming as if the letters themselves were alive and conspiring against me. And in that split second, I felt my entire house tilt on its foundation as though the world had been pulled out from under me. because stamped in bold black at the top were the words, paternity test, probability 99.998%. My name, his name. My throat locked as the walls of my bland suburban home blurred around me, the realtor-neutral beige paint, the HOA violation notices taped passive-aggressively to my fridge, the Father's Day card my 8-year-old had left for me on the counter just that morning, with his messy handwriting and the words, "You're my hero." Dad scrawled in crayon, and now this document sat in my shaking hands like a time bomb. Elliot Crane watched me with a calmness that didn't belong in this world, his perfect suit catching the morning light like he hadn't been bleeding out in my arms just hours earlier. His voice controlled and deliberate as he said, "I met your mom a lifetime ago. There was an NDA, money, secrets. I should have shown up sooner." My tongue felt like sandpaper as the words tumbled out. Is this some kind of sick joke? But his eyes, sharp and cold, told me there was nothing funny about this. "Someone wants both of us erased," he whispered, his tone carrying a weight that pressed against my ribs. Last night wasn't an accident. My board thinks I'm about to expose them. The paper means I had to come. My pulse was hammering so loud I barely heard the sound before it happened. An explosion of shattering glass ripped through the living room window, shards raining across the hardwood floor like glittering knives. An instinct yanked me to the ground as a bullet chewed the drywall inches from where my head had just been. Elliot shoved me down harder, his hand firm on the back of my neck, as another shot tore through the house and punched into the wall above the mantel. My mind screamed not here, not with my kid's drawing still taped to the fridge, but there was no time for panic, only survival. We hit the floor, crawling through shards of glass, my heart slamming against my ribs as Elliot pressed the hotel keycard into my palm again, his voice urgent now, stripped of all polish. "Room 714, open the safe. If I die, you carry it. Do you understand? You carry it." Tires screeched outside, rubber burning against asphalt, and through the cracked blinds I saw the same black SUV shapes I had seen on the highway hours before, shadows gliding across my quiet suburban street where kids normally played basketball in the driveways. My brain was screaming questions, but my body was already moving. I grabbed my kid's backpack from the chair, my car keys rattling in my trembling hands, adrenaline drowning every other thought. Elliot jammed the folded paternity paper against my chest so hard it stung, his eyes locking on mine, voice hoarse but unyielding. "This is how they lose. Keep moving." His words hit harder than the bullets, because there was no mistaking the desperation in them, no mistaking that somehow this paper tied me into a war I never knew existed. Sirens finally wailed in the distance, their cry too late, too loud, and too perfectly timed, as though summoned not to protect but to clean up what was left. I stumbled toward the hallway when my phone buzzed sharply in my pocket, my Ring camera notification. I yanked it open with shaking fingers, and the blood in my veins froze solid. On the screen was my neighbor, the one who always smiled too politely at HOA meetings, the treasurer who complained about lawn heights and garbage bins, crouched low on my porch. His hand slipped a black device beneath the welcome mat, sleek, compact, military-looking. For one heartbeat I thought it was a bomb, but then the recognition struck like lightning. Not explosives, but a cell jammer. He wasn't trying to blow us up. He was cutting us off from calling out, from recording, from reaching anyone beyond the walls of this house. And the worst part wasn't the device itself. It was his face. Calm, focused, professional. Like this wasn't the first time he had done something like this. My stomach turned as realization crashed through me like a tidal wave. This wasn't random, this wasn't chaos, this wasn't even just Elliot's world bleeding into mine. This was my neighborhood, my life, my supposed safe suburban bubble already infiltrated, corrupted from the inside out. Every family barbecue, every HOA meeting, every forced smile at the mailbox, all of it had been a mask. And behind it was someone working for the same faceless machine that had swept an entire billionaire's accident off the map. Elliot's words pounded in my ears again. Someone wants both of us erased. And now I understood. It wasn't about him alone anymore. They were coming for me too. Room 714 smelled like lemon cleaner and fear. That sterile hotel scent meant to calm you, but now laced with the metallic tang of adrenaline in my mouth. My hands slick with sweat as I shut the door and threw the lock, every nerve screaming that I had already been followed. The curtains were drawn, but light bled in around the edges, cutting the dim room into blades, and in the center stood the small beige safe like an altar. Elliot's keycard was still in my palm, sticky with old blood, and as I knelt, the carpet felt rough under my knees, each heartbeat pounding behind my eyes. The safe's keypad waited, blinking its green eye at me, daring me to get it wrong. My fingers shook as I punched in the last 6 digits of Elliot's watch serial. He had murmured it on the drive here. Barely conscious, and with a mechanical click, the door swung open, revealing a neat stack of items like props in a stage play, a second folded paper, a flash drive sealed in a clear evidence bag, and a heavy cream envelope with a notary stamp pressed into the flap. I reached for the envelope first, tearing it open with trembling hands. And inside was a document titled Letter of Dissolution and Power of Attorney, signed not just by Elliot Crane, but naming me in bold print as his legal proxy. My breath hitched as I unfolded the second page, scanning lists of assets and shell corporations I didn't understand. Companies registered in Delaware, Panama, even the Cayman Islands, all now supposedly under my legal control. The flash drive was labeled in his handwriting. Just one word: proof. I jammed it into my laptop, heart hammering as file after file populated the screen, spreadsheets of donations funneled through fake charities, invoices to front companies, even bank transfers labeled as community grants that traced back to the HOA account from my own neighborhood. And then a short video window popped up automatically, flickering to life. Elliot appeared on screen, gaunt in a hoodie, filmed in some shadowy backroom, his voice low and steady. If you're watching this, they tried to stage my death. The board, my wife, the CFO. We faked the paternity test to force legal standing. Your real father. He paused, swallowing hard. He died a decent man. He saved me once. I owe him my life. Now I'm paying the debt to his son. My lungs emptied, a hiss of disbelief escaping me. Because in an instant the world inverted. Elliot wasn't my father, the test was a weapon, and the entire setup had been to give me legal standing to blow open his empire in court. My mouth worked, but no words came, only a rasp. So I'm not your... When a thunderous pounding shook the door. Housekeeping? A voice called, flat and dead. A voice that didn't care about towels or turned-down service. My stomach dropped. I snapped the laptop closed, killed the lights, and pressed my face to the carpet, peering under the gap of the door. Combat boots. 2 shadows. Guns raised. My phone buzzed in my pocket. An unknown number. I thumbed it open and a text burned across the screen. Bring the drive to the pier by noon or we take your boy. My heart detonated. I called my ex. Straight to voicemail. Called the sitter. Deadline. Another text pinged. A live photo of my son on our porch, his small shoulders hunched, a gloved hand gripping him from behind. In the reflection of the porch camera's glass, I caught a flash of a sleeve patch. Crane Innovation Security. Not strangers. Not random kidnappers. Elliot's own people. My vision narrowed, black at the edges. He had built an empire of loyalty and now it had turned rabid, and my child was the bait. The pounding at the door grew harder, wood cracking, hinges screaming. I spun to the window, ripped it open, and the fire escape yawned like a ladder into a worse world below. Clutching the drive, the papers, and nothing else, I climbed out just as the door splintered behind me and shots hammered the walls, thudding into the cheap headboard where I had been kneeling seconds earlier. The alley below smelled of garbage and wet metal, but a familiar engine idled at the curb. My neighbor's truck, tailgate down, rope and duct tape neatly coiled in the bed like a promise. My shoes hit the rungs, every step clanging like a bell, my breath coming in jagged knives as I descended. Behind me, men in black poured into the room, leaning out the window, shouting commands, muzzles flashing as bullets tore at the iron bars of the escape. Sparks spit against my face. I jumped the last 10 feet, landing hard on wet asphalt, knees jarring. The neighbor's door swung open and he stepped out, smiling too wide, calling my name like a friend inviting me over for a beer. I backed away, clutching the flash drive to my chest, feeling it beat like a second heart. Above us, Elliot dropped to the alley floor beside me, his eyes glassy with something like resignation, his perfect mask cracking for the first time since he had knocked on my door that morning. I'm going to surrender at the pier, he said quietly, like he was telling me the weather. You take the drive somewhere they can't touch. Court, press, anyone. If I don't make it, he swallowed, pressing the second page of the letter into my hand, read the second page. Around the corner, another engine revved, and my neighbor's smile slid into something cold and businesslike as he reached behind his back. The rain started again, light at first, then heavier, washing the alley in silver streaks as my pulse beat in my throat, realizing the next move I made would decide whether my son lived or vanished forever. The river wore a gray sky like a bruise, heavy clouds sagging low over the warehouses that lined the pier, the water lapping against rusted pylons with a hollow slap that felt like a countdown clock ticking in my chest. And as I crept between stacks of shipping crates, I could hear the gulls screaming overhead like they knew something human was about to die. Noon hit with a shiver of cold wind, and from the shadows Elliot Crane emerged, walking into the open with the kind of posture you only see in men who already know they've lost everything. His head high, but his eyes empty, like a man stepping into weather he couldn't control. Across the lot, an Escalade purred to a stop, its black paint gleaming even in the gloom, and from it stepped his wife, ice-perfect, sunglasses big enough to hide everything but her disdain, a corporate lawyer at her elbow with a leather folio tucked beneath his arm, and behind them hovered the CFO, a man whose pinstripe suit looked more like armor than fabric, his jaw clenched tight as though he had already rehearsed this scene 100 times. "Turn around, Elliot," she called across the distance, her voice flat, rehearsed, the tone of someone delivering a line in a play she didn't believe in. "We'll fix this. Family first." Elliot's laugh was short, bitter, sharp enough to slice through the damp air. "You mean money first," he said, and the words dropped like anchors in the silence that followed. My hand shook as I held my phone up, filming through a crack in the crates, because every instinct screamed to run. But some part of me knew this was the proof Elliot wanted, the evidence of what family really meant to people like them. That's when the HOA treasurer appeared out of nowhere, blocking my view, his smile stretched too tight across his face, eyes dead as stones. "Wrong place, wrong time, buddy," he muttered, his voice low and venomous, like a neighbor warning me about trash cans left out too long. I lifted my phone higher, my voice breaking with fear but loud enough to cut the space. "Ring caught you planting a jammer on my porch." For the first time, his smile faltered, cracking into something raw, something cornered, and I saw the truth in his face. He wasn't just a pawn. He was the mule Elliot had named in his letter. Elliot lifted his hands slowly, palms open, surrender painted on his silhouette, and his wife tilted her head slightly, as if savoring the victory. Security fanned out from the SUVs, black-suited men with earpieces and unreadable faces, their formation precise, rehearsed, like they'd practiced this ambush as a drill. Elliot leaned toward his wife, his lips moving just enough for me to see the whisper. And for the first time, her perfect facade cracked, the briefest flicker of panic tightening her mouth, a shiver of real fear crossing her otherwise frozen eyes. She wasn't as in control as she wanted everyone to believe. The CFO moved in that heartbeat, fast, deliberate, a hand sliding under his jacket and pulling free the black gleam of a pistol. And before my brain could even register the intent, the flash cracked the air like thunder, the sound bouncing off steel and water, and Elliot's body jerked violently, his chest blooming dark as he staggered backward. My phone nearly slipped from my hand as I scrambled from cover, lungs heaving, feet splashing through puddles as I raced to him, the world narrowing into the sound of his breath rasping wet and shallow. Blood spilled across my arms as I caught him, hot and forever, staining me in ways I knew would never wash out. And in his fist he clutched the second page of the letter, torn free as though he had planned for this moment all along. He shoved it against my chest, his fingers weak but insistent, his voice ragged. "Read." My eyes skimmed the words, heart breaking with every line. To the judge, the board laundered billions through a donation accelerator, a fake charity under our HOA network. The treasurer is their mule. My wife signed the wiring authority. My son, I stumbled on the word, choking, is in danger. I transfer power of attorney to my name and dissolve my holdings. He's the only person I trust because he has nothing to gain and everything to lose. This is my confession. This is my will. Sirens cut the air now, not the hollow staged kind, but the real screaming kind, drawing closer, echoing off steel as red and blue lights flickered faint on the water. The CFO tossed his gun into the river with a smooth motion, his face blank, already rehearsing his alibi, while Elliot's wife began to cry, shoulders shaking in a performance so clean it made my skin crawl, her sobs timed perfectly as though she had practiced them in a mirror. Security clustered, spinning their story to the incoming cops before the cruisers had even parked, Each line practiced, polished, choreographed to erase the truth. I looked down at Elliot, his hand loosening, his grip slipping from the paper, his eyes glazing over as though focusing on something far away, something only he could see. His lips moved one last time, his voice a broken whisper that cracked me open. "Tell your boy. Your father was a good man. Both of them." And then he was gone, his chest still, his body limp in my arms, and the gray sky seemed to sag lower, pressing the world into silence. Footsteps pounded across the pier, two detectives cutting through the chaos, their faces hard, unreadable, one of them holding a small plastic evidence bag. He pressed it into my trembling hands, and through the fog of grief and rage I saw what was inside, a real paternity report, notarized, date-stamped years ago, probability 99.999998%. My stomach lurched as my eyes locked on the name, because this time it wasn't Elliot Crane's at all. It was someone else's. The courthouse hummed with fluorescent judgment, every light flickering like it was straining to expose every secret in the room. And as I sat on the hard bench clutching the flash drive, Elliot's notarized confession, and the ring footage, I felt like I had carried a bomb into the heart of the system. My chest so tight I could barely breathe as the DA skimmed the files with trembling fingers, his expression the look of a man watching a dam crack and realizing the flood would not stop. In that sterile air, I unfolded the real paternity report again, the one the detectives had handed me in the evidence bag, my eyes locking on the line that stripped away every illusion. Father, Michael Hart, my dad. The man who delivered packages until his heart gave out in a fluorescent break room with no windows. The man who never had a dollar left over but always found a way to buy me sneakers. The man whose shoulders had carried me through childhood with nothing but grit and love. Elliot hadn't lied exactly, but he had twisted the truth. Edited the record to make me undeniable in court, to make judges move fast, to slam doors open by attaching his name to mine, forging his own lines so that my voice and my father's legacy could finally be heard. And it hit me all at once. On Father's Day, he hadn't come to claim me as his own. He had come to protect me the way my real father once protected him. That realization cracked something inside me. And as news broke like thunder across the courthouse TVs, I knew his gamble had paid off. CFO arrested at SeaTac trying to board a plane to Zurich. Elliot's wife indicted on wire fraud, charity fraud, and conspiracy charges. The smug HOA treasurer in cuffs with his keyring jangling like chains, and board resignations rolling in like falling dominoes, an empire collapsing in real time. Hours later, I drove home through streets still slick with rain, my body aching with the weight of every secret now out in the open. And when I opened my front door, the house smelled faintly of wet earth and coffee I hadn't made. The kind of ordinary comfort I never thought I'd taste again. My boy was waiting on the stairs, his hair sticking up in soft tufts, a paper crown taped together from churchcraft scraps balanced crooked on his head, his eyes too innocent for the nightmare I had just survived. "Is it still Father's Day?" he asked, voice small, hopeful, and for a moment the whole world collapsed into those 4 words. My throat burned as I pulled him close, whispering, "Yeah, buddy, it is," even though my voice cracked like glass. Then came the sound of footsteps on the porch, and a courier slid a thick envelope under the door with no return address, vanishing before I could open the door. Inside was a deed transferring my house to me, free and clear, no mortgage, no strings, no HOA clause, and tucked against it was a single handwritten note in Elliot's jagged scrawl. "Your father saved my life 20 years ago when I was just another greedy idiot with too much money and not enough soul. When the board turned on me, I had one compass. What would Mike do? He'd save the kid first. Happy Father's Day, E." My hands shook as I read it, tears burning my eyes where no one could see. And just as I thought I had nothing left to feel, I noticed the last page stuck to the deed, a bank slip stamped in bold, $5,000 wired to Hart Family Trust. Purpose, restitution. My breath left me in a gasp, but even that wasn't the end. Because moments later, the doorbell rang again, and when I checked the feed, my ex was standing there. Her eyes red, her hands shaking as she clutched yet another paper. She pushed it into my palms without a word, and my gut twisted as I read the header. Fertility Clinic. Data Integrity Alert. My blood froze as the words sank in. Our son's DNA had been part of a research batch the clinic had quietly sold to a private buyer years ago, and that buyer had been none other than Crane Innovations, illegally, silently, for years. My boy hadn't just been a child in their eyes. He had been a line item on a spreadsheet long before he ever drew breath. Elliot had discovered it, fought it, and bought his way to the truth the only way a man like him could, paying with blood, with empire, with the last fragments of his soul. The board's real business had never been apps or innovation, it was people. I looked at my boy, at the flimsy crown on his head, at the fragile, irreplaceable life that had almost been erased by greed, and something ignited inside me that felt bigger than fear. I set up my camera, hit record, and sent the video to every newsroom I could find, every subreddit dedicated to true stories, every neighborhood forum that had ever argued about trash cans and fences. My voice shook but held steady as I said, "Here's what Father's Day means. A man with everything chose to lose it so a delivery driver's kid could live free. If you're a father, a mother, a neighbor, watch your HOA dues. Watch your clinics. Watch your billionaires. And watch your doorbell cameras. They tell the parts the news won't. Outside, sirens wailed faint and distant, swallowed by the night. But inside my house a child laughed, light and whole, and I knew the paper that once threatened to ruin me had instead saved me, rewritten me, given me back not just my life, but my father's honor. And somewhere beyond money, beyond power, beyond graves and secrets, a man who was never my father had done the most fatherly thing I had ever seen.